Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm making a cute little card using Birthday Chicks stamp set from My Favourite Things stamps. So I haven't used this set before, so I'm prepping the images by rubbing them on the back of my hand just to get rid of any of the um, products that are left over from the manufacturing process. It just helps them to ink a bit better. So I've double stamped those twice onto some Express It cardstock, and while I've got my MISTI out, I'm also going to white emboss the sentiment, and that is the image, or sorry, the stamp that says "To the Birthday Chick." So I'm lining that up in the negative space because I find it easier to centre it properly if it's in the negative space. Once I have that on my MISTI lid, then I will put the die cut piece back in, and so I can stamp onto it. So I'm just popping the die cut back in, getting my anti-static pad and my Versamark ink ready, and I'm just going to stamp that with Versamark ink and then cover it with some white embossing powder. So there it is stamped, and get out the white embossing powder. I keep my white in a really big container because I use it all the time. So I'll flick off any of the bits that aren't in the right place, sticking where they shouldn't be. Heat up my heat gun, and I always heat it up against my hand. When my hand starts getting hot, I know it's ready. Stupid, I know. So heat that up, melt the powder, and put that to one side until I need it at the end of the process. So now I'm going to do some quick Copic colouring. I have just shown you how I coloured the two chicks on the right hand side because I used the same process for all of them. So I colour dark to light. So I've outlined and identified where my darkest areas are going to be with my darkest colour, and then I come over the top with each subsequent lighter colour. And occasionally, if I'm using a really light colour, it tends to eat into the darker colours, so sometimes I'll go back over it again with one of the mid-tone colours, but I try not to if I can, and just let the Copic inks just blend together by themselves. So I'll leave you with a bit of music for the rest of the colouring, and I'll be back very shortly. Thanks. Okay, so I've got a white top folding card base and I've already die cut another panel that sits over the top of that. And I've die cut that with a stitched rectangle stacks die to make it about 1/4 inch smaller than the card base, and also an inside out stitched circle die. And what I've done is I've taken a pencil and lightly marked just to the outside of where that circle opening is, because I don't want my inks to go beyond those pencil lines and show on the outside of that rectangle panel. So just blending on some tumbled glass distress ink using the mini cloud stencil, and then down the bottom I'm going to I started out, I was just going to sponge over the drifts and hills stencil, and then I realised that I'd end up with white spaces. So I just put a light coating down of Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink before I did my stenciling. And all I wanted really was a very light effect of hill, so it just wasn't one-dimensional boring green patch. So once I've done that, very quick and easy, I didn't waste any time on it, and I then was in a position to lay all my elements on the card and start putting it all together. So you can see there what you can see through that opening, and then I'll get my sentiment strip, put that through the centre, and then lay my chicks around it. So I started adhering those down, and the chick with the cupcakes, I didn't want him sort of hanging in mid-air, so I grabbed a couple of N-shade Copic markers and just put a slight shadow on the ground to indicate a cast shadow from the chick. So I'm just holding my finger there so that I know where to put that shading, grabbing a couple of the pens from my holder and slapping down, literally slapping down a couple of bits of just a wee patch of that ink, just so that he looks like he's on the ground. I actually come back later with an E40 marker because I wanted it to look more like dirt, so I went over the top of it with that light brown marker. So I'm just attaching the rest of my little chicks, and these two here, I'm just putting a tiny little bit at the bottom of the chicks because I want that to sit on top of the sentiment, and then I want it all to be popped up on foam tape. So I didn't want to put too much glue on that image there. So now I'm attaching the sentiment strip to the circle cutout panel, and then once all that's stuck down, I can apply some foam tape to the back of that whole panel. So get out my 3M foam tape, and I'm actually quite frugal with this stuff, not because of the price of the tape, but because the price of the shipping to New Zealand is horrendous. So I actually cut it in thirds or quarters even, depending on how much support I need behind my elements. But yeah, I think I'm on to about my third roll so far. I do love the stuff, but I don't like the price of shipping, and you can't buy it in New Zealand. So that's my card for today. Thank you very much. Just finishing off with a little bit of clear sparkle pen, and these where I go and add a bit of brown Copic marker to the ground. Sparkle pen on the party hats and the cupcake icing, and that is it. So thanks very much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time. See you.